Millie Dulan is our next presenter. She told me she's a little bit nervous, so I just told her, just imagine everyone's naked. So from now on, you're all naked. She's gonna tell us a bit more about Croatian AI, public policy journey towards the AI Sandbox. So.
Thank you, Sarah. Don't worry, you're not all naked. I'm going to use, another person said to me, just imagine that no one has shoes on. So thank you all for getting pedicures. Tomislav, where are you? Thank you so much for your presentation, and thank you for giving us examples from Latvia and Estonia. And you are right, we often hear about the magical land of Estonia where everything that is tech-related happens and is so easy. But perhaps next year you will be in Estonia presenting the flexible sandbox model that was born in Croatia. I'm going to give you a little introduction to the next panel, well, the first panel, which is about the Croatian sandbox model. So I won't go into too much detail about what we propose, but I will tell you a little bit about the journey, which is how we, basically, why we decided to go with the sandbox model and what we think we need to do next. So, and I'm going to use some Lord of the Rings references, but I promise I won't do it too much, but I will tell you about the journey to the sandbox. It all started back in February 2020 when the European Commission published its white paper on artificial intelligence. And if you're a policy geek, once you see a white paper, you get all excited because that means that there's a legislative framework that is coming, and that's always super exciting. So we said, okay, we have the white paper on AI, which sets Europe's course for legislating artificial intelligence. One thing that became very clear to us is that the starting point that the European Commission is taking is very risk-averse. So a couple of words that came out from this were risk, trustworthy, and human-centric. So we thought, okay, let's have a look at this. And one thing we saw was that there was a lot of talk about risk, but there was very little talk about innovation and how the European Commission plans to stimulate innovation. And the European Commission said, well, look, you know, we're not the US, we're not China, we're not Israel, but we should be. And therefore, let's try and legislate this. So we thought, okay, well, that sounds a bit scary. And we saw that when it comes to the early stages of innovation, when it came to the incubation phase, there was nothing there. So we thought, okay, well, perhaps we should suggest the sandbox with a code of conduct as a method of giving policymakers the security that innovation is happening in a safe environment, but also them just kind of leaving innovators alone. So we thought, okay, so we have this idea, what do we do next? Well, we need a fellowship for this journey. So the first people we took on this fellowship were our friends from the European AI Forum, and we were very lucky that we were presiding over the Council of the EU at the time, and France and Germany basically said, let's start the European AI Forum, let's create a European AI Association platform which we could use to communicate our main messages. So I'm not going to go into detail about all the things we did. The other thing we did, we said, okay, well, so we have our fellowship, but now where is the power? And so there were two main towers of power, Brussels and our member state, which is Croatia. So we went on a path, on a journey, explaining why the sandbox is relevant and why the sandbox should be included in some kind of a legislative framework for artificial intelligence. April 2021, super exciting, the European Commission finally released its Artificial Intelligence Act. And we all had a party because the sandbox managed to make it into the proposal, and it was sort of proposed as one of the main measures to stimulate innovation. So we thought, okay, so from the why we need a sandbox, we got the sandbox, but what do we do next? The sandbox, the way it's framed in the current proposal, it's very loose and very open. So we thought, okay, well, we need to help policymakers understand what should this sandbox look like. So we decided to propose 3 measures to support what we say are flexible sandboxes. You will hear a lot about this in the coming panel, but basically our 3 main measures are a code of conduct for creating sandboxes, case-by-case sandboxing in accordance with the code of conduct, and then an insurance policy that covers testing within the sandbox. So for us, why these 3 measures? First of all, we think that the European Commission needs to strongly stand behind startups, especially during prototyping and testing. The European Commission and member states should endorse a secure, transparent and flexible framework for innovation. And if we do these things, you will do the most important thing that you want to do, other than creating a sort of human-centric AI, which is actually keep AI innovation in Europe. Why do we say this? Well, because the way it's structured at the moment, the way the sandbox is proposed, is that it's sort of a generic one sandbox to rule them all approach. We think that this is dangerous, because if there is just one sandbox that everyone needs to fit into, well then that sort of limits creativity and innovation. Why the code of conduct? Why should we leave innovators alone in these early stages of development? Because if you overburden early stage innovation with administrative obligations, it's highly likely that people will say, well, look, I mean, I do want to be in Europe, I want to create in Europe, but if you make me, at the very early stage, contact someone who is a government official, and for them to say, yeah, you're okay to do this, or they say, well, actually, I have 20 other sandbox applications waiting, so I'll get back to you in 6 months, that doesn't really do much for innovation. And another thing is that CroAI, you know, we support a human-centric approach to AI. We support risk, which is why we see the sandbox as a good method of mitigating risk when it comes to AI. However, legislating from an exclusively risk-averse standpoint is completely counterproductive. So basically, we were advocating our sandbox. It's in the AI Act. We have 3 measures that dictate what we think the sandbox should look like. So what do we do now? Our next step is to build a coalition in Croatia, in the Croatian IT community, and then to take that to other EU member states as well. The code of conduct that we are proposing, we think, should be created through an interdisciplinary working group that consists of policymakers, innovators, academics, for us to have a truly a list of hows and whats that everyone can follow. And the third thing is that, so as I mentioned earlier, in the AI Act, sandboxes are, you know, they're there and there are some explanations, but it's still quite loose. So we want to make sure that as an association, and then as the European AI Forum, the implementing acts clearly define what the sandbox looks like. And we want our model to be the one that is acceptable. And that's it. I mean, if you are super excited about policymaking, if you're super excited about AI and innovating in Europe, join us. We're always excited to hear what everyone thinks and how they can contribute. So enjoy the panel.
Yes, as Millie said, it's time for the panel discussion on how to build a national sandbox. I would like to introduce Goran Dautovic, Martina Dragicevic, Bojan Jerbić, Mislav Malenica, Ivana Jukov, and the moderator Jan Štedl.
Samo Jan, molim te, ja sam Vukov, ne Jukov. Da, ali me predstavila kao Jukov.
To je Boston, da ne bi.
čisto da ne bi bilo da traži neku juhovu vladu, ne nađu.
So this is not, Professor, this is just your statement, not to ask difficult questions, right? Okay. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining this panel. And thanks to Millie, she gave us a nice intro into what we're going to talk about today. There's a clock running there. My internal clock is saying that it's coffee time anyway, and we're waiting for this coffee break too. So I will probably do. Yeah, you can't hear me? That's the first time I ever heard that. Okay, let me see. Can you hear me better now? Can you hear me better now? Thank you very much. We'll kick it off. We'll try to keep it nice, sweet and short, very dynamic, so that we can all have and enjoy a coffee break and then mingle around. So save all your questions that you have for the panelists at the coffee break. You can approach them directly. I would like to kick this off by introducing my esteemed panelists, and I would like to start with the ladies, of course, first. Ivana Vukov, Sara, Vukov with a V, like Virovitica. Ivana, you are a special advisor of some sort. Could you please tell us a bit more of that? What is your official title?
My official title, thank you, Jan, is Special Advisor to the Prime Minister of Croatia, Mr. Andrej Plenković.
Thank you very much. And Martina here from A1.
Well, Director of the EU Affairs, Regulatory Affairs and EU Funding Affairs. So 3 complementary affairs that are also connected to AI.
Okay. Good kind of affairs, I would say. Goran.
Hi, my name is Goran, and I'm Director of Public Policy at Project 3 Mobility, one, let's say, from media company, you may know, implementation and development of fully autonomous vehicles in Zagreb.
Amazing. And so we have, I'm sorry, Goran.
And in charge of governmental funding, regulatory affairs, relations with governments and local governments, and deployment planning.
Thank you. Could you just please, because they're gonna complain. Heidi, I already see her. I can see her from here, saying that she cannot hear you probably. Mislav, would you please present? We don't know who you are. Could you tell us a bit more about yourself?
So I'm Mislav, I'm president of Croatian AI Association, and I'm also CEO of AI startup called Mindsmiths.
Oh, thank you, Mislav. Very nice to meet you. And Mr. Professor, could you please introduce yourself and your lovely friend there?
Sure, Professor at the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering, Head of Regional Center of Excellence for Robotic Technologies, Head of Chair for Autonomous System and Artificial Intelligence, and this is my associate. I will address it later.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you very much. So we had the opportunity today to hear a little bit about some sandboxes already in the making. What I loved especially from Daniel's story from Slovenia, which kind of reminded me to the early days of the elevators where you still had to have the operator inside because the people were too afraid to go in there, and the operator would then press the buttons and then they would be okay to go. And nowadays we don't even think about it. It would be ridiculous to have somebody press the buttons for us. So it's obviously that technology somehow frightens people, and I think also what Millie kind of gave us in the introduction is that the policymakers from EU also kind of took a very defensive stance and a risk-based approach. So my question would be for Mislav, for example, yeah, of course, what a surprise, is if you could give us a little bit more explanation on what this sandbox is. So I don't know, many people maybe, as Millie says, all you policy geeks follow me, but we don't know how many of them actually are here. And I don't know if everybody is really aware what a sandbox is. So it is, we know we played, as Željko says, in the sand before, but what is it, what is the idea behind it?
So I'll start with the why. So basically, when we saw the white paper about the AI Act, the first thing that we saw is that basically the Commission doesn't really understand the process of innovation. That there is this first phase of innovation, like when we call it incubation phase, where you don't have a lot of money, where maybe you have 2 students in a garage trying to do something. And basically they're trying to make it the same as if you're a big corporation doing something with the government where you can do a lot of harm. And then we were thinking okay, what's the clever way, how we can also create a space for the people that are in this first phase of innovation, where you basically still doesn't know, does your product even make sense? and you just cannot like spend enormous amount of money and time on like trying to satisfy some conditions when you realistically cannot actually do any harm. You don't have a reach to billions of people around the world. And then we realized that we just need to create a new format. We need to be able to say, yes, we want AI to be safe in Europe. So everything that goes in production, it needs to follow the regulation. And we in Europe should probably have a high standards on that. But still, we need to recognize that there are people who are building something new. And if it's something new and no one actually built it before, it's very hard to regulate it if you don't know what it even is. So we said, let's call it a sandbox.
Okay.
So let's call it a sandbox, and let's say that it's a small playground where basically you have like a small number of test subjects, everybody can know what's going on, you can have like a really strong human oversight and so on, so you can really limit the potential harm to something that's acceptable. And then we basically pushed it as an idea. This is an AI sandbox, let's complement the acts with it, and then we'll create space for innovators.
Amazing. So Professor, you're doing also some amazing work. Other than your fellow friend here, you also created at the university a robot that assists during neurosurgeries and doctors and stuff like that. Like really amazing stuff. So does this somehow correlate what Mislav is saying to how do you even innovate? I mean, how do you come from a point where you say, okay, let's build a robot that would assist surgeons to open up human brains and do some surgeries, to actually having that robot operating in the surgery room?
Sure, it's a long story because we started the project 12 years ago, It was a long and tough journey, When we started to doing this, I should be honest, we were not aware actually about the problems we encountered there. And actually, but we were very determined to do it, very focused, And so I'm not allowed to tell you the whole story in the preclinical testing and so on, because there were so many dangerous things we faced. But anyhow, we were supposed to invent a lot of new things, new methods, new approaches, particularly in control theory, in vision systems, everything else. Even we were supposed to design a small self-drilling bone screws, so tiny things. To finish this idea, Okay, we did 1,000 preclinical testing in that sense. And finally, after all, we should build our own confidence in our mathematics, in our AI methods, in our technical solutions. After that, we finally decided, let's go to operate. It was a very brave decision. Prior to that, we had to obtain a number of documents, approvals, opinion of ethical committee from faculty of medicine, and so on. After that, in 2016, in March, we really did the first operation. It was very blooded tumor and so on. The results, it was like a flight to the moon for us, And after the brilliant results, our robot Rona operates until today on a regular basis in Clinical Hospital Dubrava. In 2018, we presented a new fourth generation of our a surgical robot, which was on the new level of autonomy, And then we are right now in the development phase of new generation, which will be first autonomous robot, which will do real operating functions not seen today, and even this robot will be mobile as well. And I hope very soon we will put this whole project in certification and finally offer this product worldwide.
Great, amazing. So Goran, thank you very much, Professor. So you mentioned P3 probably most of the room knows it's something connected to Rimac, and it's all about the autonomous vehicles and everything else. But maybe you could share a little bit more about what the idea behind it is actually.
Well, the idea is to develop the whole urban mobility ecosystem, so mobility as a service based on fully autonomous vehicles, also specialized infrastructure that will support these vehicles and service, and also the platform that will be interaction between customers, vehicle, control center, and this infrastructure. So right now we have in total more than 200 people on board, either internal or external, on the project. We are 2 years old, so have big plans in deployment. As it is publicly disclosed, our first market that we plan deployment is Zagreb in Q4 2024, but in the following months, so starting from April 2025, there will be many other European cities. So focus will be on United Kingdom, Germany, and some Scandinavian countries and Middle East in the first year. And then the expansion will go further to Asian countries, South Korea and Japan, and down there in Australia.
Amazing. So big, ambitious plans. I hope it all works out as planned. But listening to this, Ivana, now, so we see that there are innovators. This, for example, professor's example is, okay, somebody who comes from a state university, obviously there is a little bit of an easier path to kind of get all of these things approved, although 12 years is not a short time. And then we have private investors also hoping to implement AI solutions, some very innovative stuff that will eventually come into contact with the general public. And of course, there will be, trials and errors and issues like that. So what can, from your opinion or from your knowledge, what can the state do to facilitate things like that? Do you see the Sandbox to be something that could be an official thing in Croatia soon enough? Could we be like one of the first countries to do it right? Or what is the view on that?
Thank you, Jan. Well, I have a feeling like the time for technology has arrived to become the centers, to take the center stage. And the reason why I would say that is because I'll just take a step back and I'll talk as someone from the government just a little bit to give you a context why I think that. So the global challenges that we have, if we only take the first three, which one is that the UN World Food Program has just the other day said that there is almost 1 billion people who do not have enough food to eat. Now, just think about that. Food shortage. It's not going to get better. Climate crisis, the scientists are saying that the models for prediction of the weather are so good that we cannot call it natural disaster anymore. Now think about that. That's a whole new paradigm on how we think about things that are happening around us. Weather. Croatia is not excluded. And energy. We are here, talking about technology, but technology consumes a lot of energy. And so we have three issues that Croatia is just part of. We can see that the documents of the European Commission across the EU, there is some sort of synergy finally happening around the understanding what the global issues are. And we're trying to position Europe within these issues. And we want Europe to be the place where solutions are going to happen. We are also aware that Europe has a strong value set in protecting the fundamental rights of citizens and protecting democracy. And so I feel that for the first time, startups have an opportunity to be, to really become an excellent, give their contribution to these problems. And the thing is that all these documents like the Path to a Digital Decade, Recovery and Resilience Facility, where every member state had to figure out how to spend 25% on digitization. It's not ideal, it's not great, it's not perfect. It's an attempt, but it's a first attempt of this sort that almost every document has to address the digital component, which tells me that in near future, in really near future, digital is going to become as essential as like public administration, as finances. It's going to become essential to our businesses. And so the government, I think, on one hand, I'm just going to say from my personal experience, working and introducing agile working methods in government, we're going to have to move away from looking at whether someone is digitally literate to having digital skill sets. We're going to have to change the way that we think and imply agile working a lot more and focus on our clients and users, because governments also have clients and users of its services. And so, I've gone through this process in detail with my teams inside the government, and I've looked at the challenges that are ahead. They're great because the traditional way of doing things is very much embedded. But I feel that a sandbox is a must for Croatia. I feel that, and this is my personal opinion, that Croatia has to be the best at it and has to come up with a model that has a wide consensus in our society, because it has to be at the source of where technology is being applied. If you're at the source of technology where it's applied, you can also have a say about what you want your future to look like. We know that application of AI has implications for our society and for the way how we are going to live our lives and how our daily life is going to look like. So why not take the gears, have the car and you drive it? And so if we want Rimac to test in Zagreb in 2024, and we want that, there is a consensus across the government, that's what we're doing, then we need to become a lot more engaged in how we're going to make this happen. And I'll tell you, I see the sandbox, and I agree with what Mili said, and especially what Mislav said, that there has to be, simplicity has to be kept in the process. You don't want to overburden it with bureaucracy. However, I find that the key is the balance of how you involve the regulator to follow the process, because what we need to do on the government side is we also need to look at our education policy so that we bring along all those linguists and sociologists and lawyers to understand technology, to have it, to have that knowledge so they can follow the repercussions of the testing, so that we can capture the learning that comes out of this testing, so that the rest of the market can benefit from the captured learning, so that we have a loop where it goes back into policy making. And now it brings us back to this conversation between the government and private sector that has traditionally always existed. There is always a consultation process, but it's kind of in stages. It's this waterfall planning method, where you do things in stages. And Agile is about just creating a model, then testing, then tweaking, then testing, capturing the learning, going back until you do it well. And this is what we've done with the eCitizens portal. This is how I work with my teams. We worked in the health sector, and we tested it out. And the biggest challenge that I personally have is, should such a method of work be formalized in the government, or should it be informal as it is? Because once you formalize something, then it loses the...
It's not cool and hip and innovative
it's not cool,
anymore.
Yeah, you're not part of the group of people who's liberated to think outside of the box.
But so Goran, I saw you smirk when Ivana said we all have a general consensus of having those autonomous vehicles on the streets of Zagreb by 2024. What is your experience in terms of, you also stated some very global ambitions. Do you work with other governments? Is there any place, anywhere else in the world where you could maybe make it sooner than 2024? Or how does this whole thing work, where you come in and say, we're a company, we want to create a whole platform for autonomous vehicles, we want to do robo-taxis and whatever. Who do you usually talk to?
Well, you need to differentiate, let's say, four main areas where action is needed that are actually currently the blockers of implementation of this technology. First is definitely the road safety, and this is maintained on UNECE level, but since approval of the adjustment of this Vienna Convention, it will be lowered to national level. So some countries already started implementing, France, Germany, for example. So I believe Croatia is really moving forward in this direction. So we will have new road safety law approved by the parliament soon this autumn that will recognize the fully autonomous vehicle as a first step. On the other side, we have insurance as part of as blocker. This is also a very tricky area where you need to have liability covered, and also Ministry of Interior needs to be involved. There are some really good ideas. Primarily, I got this from the United Kingdom, from their UK Law Commission, where they want to. When we talked with Ministry of Interior, our first question from police was, okay, who is going to jail in case of accident?
Sure.
And they want to take totally different approach, the same as with airplane accidents. So they realize that, okay, something happened, accident happens, technology is, let's say, guilty. Let's determine what caused this accident, and in order to primarily make improvements and not to happen again. So, of course, in some cases there will be some actions of individuals that may cause accidents that will, of course, be criminal liable, but in this case, this should not be the case. Besides this insurance, we have service regulations and at the end technical regulations, because fully autonomous vehicles obviously don't need to have mirrors, don't need to have wipers. It's fully autonomous because they don't have driver and steering wheel. So this needs to be also on the global level. But according to the roadmap of all target markets, they're really moving forward, and I expect by the end of 2023 all 4 key areas to be solved.
Yeah. Okay. So Martina, of course, coming from the telco perspective, infrastructure is a big thing. 5G is a big thing. How do you see, 5G and the telcos' involvement in some sort of future sandboxes? Do you see any room for you? Or, I mean, obviously 5G is going to improve many things, but how are you going to be able to do some sort of sandboxing in the future? Can you do some sort of cooperation with startups already now? Is it safe to do it now? Are you even legally allowed to, I don't know, share data with anyone that would love to do some sort of innovative stuff?
So first, I think that telecom operators are still seen as not so excited industry. We are network builders, but without this network, you don't have surgeries, you don't have autonomic vehicles. So you're true, Jan. So I think that we are now in the renaissance of building the networks in Croatia. It's not only about 5G, it's also about the optical networks. And 5G explicitly gives you this latency that provides robots to continuously work without any distractions. But we are not only network builders, because not only the network components that provides you broadband connectivity all on the whole footprint of Croatia or other countries who are also building the networks. I think that we also, like 15 years ago, became aware that we have to be more than telco operators. All operators also have within their companies ICT departments, and also I have to say that we are proud in A1 Croatia to have augmented team. So we develop AI, some solutions only for currently for internal purposes. But nevertheless, what I would like to say, as I'm known as a policy freak, this is a great opportunity. When you take technology and network, you can have like a small private network where you can do a pilot, artificial intelligence pilot. What we need, nobody today mentioned, is our DPAs, data protection agencies. They are the crucial partners. You mentioned data. So they are the crucial partners in this kind of pilots, because you have to make aware the consumer. You asked about our data. You have to make aware the consumer that the new purpose for which her or his data will be used is not deviating for the purpose to use his data he already gave consent for. So I think that having sandboxes regulatory sandboxes. Now I'm talking like a lawyer, and I'm very excited about this experimental regulatory area. So you have to have regulatory and technological sandboxes, in which I have to admit that I like this idea in the artificial intelligence regulation, where you have within the certain period of time in controlled area possibility to design, to test, and then to check the results of testing and how innovative artificial intelligence is. So to cut it short, we have the network, we will have a better network, we need new use cases, we are open for piloting projects with startup. We are mentioned today also by A1 from Lipik team, and I think there is a new whole area that is coming, but without partnership with not only government but also all regulatory agencies, we cannot do a lot. I mean, from a telco perspective, we are heavily regulated industry, so it's not only about data protection regulation, but all other regulations.
Yeah, there are many regulations.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so let me ask Mislav. So again, I'm not an expert, but what I hear is P3, 200 members team, riding on the huge wave of remote success, catching the eye of the government, saying this is something really cool, we should stand behind this. We have the professor and the very esteemed university doing some phenomenal stuff. But what about the small startups? So we have around 200 and something members, and many of them are just 2-member teams, and they would love to do something very innovative, something crazy. Under the new proposed regulations, sometimes they're not even allowed to do that. How will they cope with all of these challenges? How can they go through all of these regulations and fulfill all of these conditions and involve data protection agencies and government officials and get all the boxes checked? And does the proposal that CroAI puts in the front somehow take an account of that? And what is the idea of how does it allow those small startups to even use regulatory sandboxes in a proper way?
Well, I would say that for companies as big as Remax, we probably don't even need a sandbox, because that would be just the old approach. The old approach is you are really big, you have a strong leverage, and then we'll just like either bend the rules a little bit, or we'll just create like something where you can actually exist. And I would say that that's not a problem, because that's happening. No one can actually stop Remax, no one can stop Infobip. They're just bigger than, basically, they're grown out of the Croatia already. The problem is, like, did we create like the right ecosystem or the right framework for small ones? Because I think we'll see on the landscape how many startups we have this year in Croatia. But I would say I'll be happy when we'll have like 1,000 startups in Croatia. Why? Because it means that we created a right environment for them, and that we created some sort of like, let's say, unfair advantage, why it actually makes sense to start a company in Croatia, why it makes sense to start like, to test 1,000 ideas in Croatia, and that will create like really new and big successful companies. So I'm afraid that that's not something that they even see in Brussels. So my biggest fear is that now when I'm part of that process there and I see how it actually looks, that there's just not enough people who really understand what AI is. And AI right now is not like something like mathematics that you learn in school, so everybody's educated about it. It's basically just the level of literacy about artificial intelligence is generally very low. There are a lot of smart people, they hear signals and they can talk about AI in a very smart way, but there's no real substance. And so they don't understand the AI, they don't understand startups. So that's why all the proposals that we get out of the Commission are always basically the same. Let's think about the interest of big companies, let's keep the status quo. Why? Because we are actually afraid of AI. And that's why we were actually, as an association, really strongly pushing for elements of AI in Croatia, because if we raise the level of like knowledge about artificial intelligence, it will be much easier to have like very meaningful conversations and dialogues, and we can actually then come to certain solutions. So what my problem is that, so we as association pushed the idea of sandboxes in the AI Act. What we got as it got accepted, but the format is still showing that there's like a lack of understanding what the real problem is. And the real problem is really small companies. It's really maybe not even incorporated. That's how actually innovation happens. And then when you validate the idea, you try to sell it, then you grow, and then at some point you can actually do a lot of things. But if you don't get the support in the beginning, then you just need to succeed against the system, not because you got the help from the system and from the whole ecosystem that we are all part of. So my biggest fear is that we'll still get something that's not adequate from Brussels, and we'll just, as a country, will accept it. Why? Because so far we haven't shown that we are actually very brave, that we have our own ideas and that we can actually stand behind these ideas. And I think it's really the time that we become brave. Why? Because this kind of opportunity, it won't happen again in the next 30 years. And I just don't think it's smart for us to wait that much time.
Well, what were some of the, like Millie briefly mentioned, there were like 3 elements to a sandbox, and some of them were like even self-regulation or self-checking if you're in line, not going over and checking all these documents, getting stamps and collecting these kind of things. Could you just give us some sort of...
So the why is very, very simple. So why we want to regulate AI? It's not because we already don't have laws that are saying, look, if you do harm to a person or to the system and so on, you'll, I don't know, go to the jail. We already have that. It's a technology the same as any other. The thing about the AI is that if you work on a really large scale, you can, with a single mistake, touch lives of billions of people and make a huge problem. So the thing is, that's why we are trying to regulate it, to add guidelines and to actually limit the potential of that kind of like a big catastrophe. The thing is, then we just scale that down, and we just don't realize that if you have 2 students and then they're going, trying to test something on 10 people, you don't have a potential for a global catastrophe. But still, you're applying the same regulation there. So we basically said, look, I as an entrepreneur, like we as a company, we are doing autonomous systems. And I have like 17 years of experience in AI, and I'm just like, my heart hurts because like a lot of things that we see from AI right now, they're just not exciting. And I would love them to be much more exciting. And they'll be much more exciting, as this robot here, if they're autonomous. But if you don't understand where the potential harm is coming, if you don't understand how things are working, you'll just be afraid of it, and you'll just stop it.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, Ivan, I would like to.
No, I just wanted to say that the same applies for government too. I mean, the change theory tells us nobody likes change. Everybody would like to stay the same they are. I mean, if you ask, someone might say, oh, I welcome positive change, but positive can also be interpreted in many different ways.
I like the pleasant type of change.
If you want to deliver a change project, you have to have an ingredient, and theory teaches us that you have to have a sense of urgency. That's why I was mentioning the global challenges, because I think we need to learn, both in government and in private sector, how to be better communicators. We need to understand what drives a change forward. And we will go through this hesitancy through communication, because what you are advocating, you're advocating for laws to be suspended temporarily, for something to be tested, but you're also advocating for learning from this testing. But this learning, what I'm trying to say this entire time, is that even though, governments don't always have this reputation of being quick on the, on the shotgun and like really sexy and attractive and open, I think the new times are coming, and we need to create this. We need to open a channel where we learn from you guys, so that the government officials can help and support you, rather than, what you say, there is lack of understanding on our side. I think we need to invest in each other to break these barriers, and these type of events are very welcome, but we need to have a lot more of
these kind of events. Jelko, please make sure.
Self-checking.
One is not enough. One per year, not enough.
I mean, let me just, I always like to be the devil's advocate at work. I always ask the questions and nobody asks, and then I get the stares. But let's imagine Croatia has introduced the Sandbox already, and it has a huge influx of innovators. Huge influx of talent, huge influx of innovators. And now you have this situation where the European Bank Federation already wrote about their experiences on Sandbox in the financial sector. And one of the things they were saying, we've noticed that it's not good to schedule a time for testing because it deters people from coming and doing it. It doesn't fit with their plans and development and scaling up and so on. And we have to think in advance. If we create how are we going to deal with this influx? Is the regulator going to at any point say, all right, this test is more relevant for our society and it deals with more pressing issue than this one? I'm just asking out there because...
So we have a very simple answer. It's basically in our proposal. It says that you don't involve a regulator or the government because you have a code of conduct. And if you are following the code of conduct, you can create your own sandbox. And basically, when you actually want to go into full production, then you need to comply to the regulation. But the whole idea of our proposal is we don't want generic sandboxes. We don't want government to get involved because the government is not very often part of the innovative process. We don't think that you can regulate something that doesn't exist, but just if we create very simple rules to follow, what's the level of the risk that's accepted? If we create insurance policy that can actually cover it, then we can do a lot of things. Because if we do just a parallel, professor is doing experiments with robots, there's a surgery, there's so much human oversight there, there are all the surgeons there and so on. It's very hard that something will actually go wrong there. You have a person at the same time writing a blog about how you can actually cure COVID if you drink something really, really bad that's not regulated. And millions of people can actually read it. And so if it's about the substance, then this won't actually do a lot of harm, but we'll actually stop the innovation there. And we are just not regulating that. And so the whole idea is actually, in our proposal, basically we are saying, me as an innovator, I'm responsible for my actions. If someone actually gives me freedom that I can actually, following those guidelines, I can create my own sandbox on my own terms, then I can pivot my business 200 times before I find something that will really work. And then when I have something that works, I'll find investment, I'll find money where I'll be able to pay to actually be compliant with regulation, and I'll go into the production.
Just one, Lou. But the regulation will have to change. But the regulation will have to change for you to get to the market in the end.
No.
Yeah, of course.
So my point is, instead of coming at the very end, with this is what we need, and then it's going to take a long time because there's going to be the same hesitancy on our part. When I say our, I think the government side. Then there should be some kind of a, loop where you're capturing the learning. That's what I'm saying.
I would maybe say it's like a chicken and the egg is the problem, but the thing is how we would love to solve it is that if we have 1,000 innovators here pushing for regulation to get changed and they have at least 1,000 votes on the next elections, then maybe it will put more pressure so that the regulation really changes. Right now, when we are basically suppressed and this community is small, then this community is not bringing that many votes. So we are basically just saying, let's enlarge our community, let's be a little bit stronger, and then we'll be louder and we'll be more important, and then the regulation will change much easier.
Martina, you had something?
Oh, well, I feel like a mediator between two sides. But what I would like to say, first of all, we really had a great opportunity to see examples from Slovenia, from Estonia, from Latvia. I think these are good examples where we can head. Second, I would comment on timing. I counted, we have like 2.2 billions of kuna in our National Resilience and Recovery Fund, where the word artificial intelligence is mentioned. So we have time till 2026 to spend these grants that allow to Croatia. So I think that we should be fast, with small entrepreneurs included as well. And I think that we also have, apart from these practices we saw today, we have great practices from the UK. Because they started with sandboxes in 2018. They had a call for proposals. They have now ongoing 4 projects. We have, from the regulatory and legal perspective, we have a good example in Norway, where the regulatory authority said, basically, do something, do what you want upon the call for the proposal, where they chose the pilot projects based on eligible criteria, and they said, we will not apply any of the corrective measures. So this is where you're heading. It's not like a code of conduct, it's like release from the regulation. So what Mislav and Croatian AI is proposing is code of conduct, like, I would say, devolution from regulation, which is also acceptable. But I think we don't have time. I agree with you. We don't have time. We have the money within the limited period of time. There will be some more money with the new financial period. So I think that we have a great opportunity. But from the private sector position, I think that we should challenge the current status.
So you think even an idea like that, let's just kind of build a wall around the sandbox, let's get insurance policies there, and let us do what we want to do. Is it completely like, because your laugh revealed a lot.
No, no, you should not. I laugh a lot. And I have a big smile. But I smile also when people are adamant in defending their position, and I like that a lot. What I read about, I prepared for this as well by reading a lot of studies and other American university, what they wrote about their experiences already with sandboxes. And so, you know, there's stuff out there we know already what doesn't work. So why would we try something that might potentially get us in the same situation where somebody else has already been in, and they say that, okay, well, a lot of these testing were a waste of time. But let me just jump in. I don't want to generalize.
Yeah,
I'm talking in general terms. So
yeah.
what I'm trying to say is only, my message here is only that if we want to be a better at supporting startups and innovation, if we want to bring in talent and start keeping this talent in Croatia, we have to also involve the government, because the government needs to change the way. It can't continue working in the same way that it has in the 20th century, because technology will affect us too. Our processes, business processes have to change, so all I'm saying is that a lot of the learning that's going to happen through a sandbox, and I want to see a sandbox in Croatia. Personally, I want to see the best sandbox in the European Union. And all of these things that were mentioned before by Tomislav, like the data-driven governance and the fact that they're working on the skills of the civil servants. This is key, because somebody needs to do the work on the government side, and you want to bring them together so that we are complementary, rather than, I'm not advocating for a regulator to, tick the boxes, to go and say, are you doing this, are you doing that? But data protection is really important. And our agency, data protection agency, needs to be put on board with all these. So I'm just saying, let's start a conversation, and this could be the first one.
Yeah, great. So Željko's got a lot of things to do. I think but I think like a very good signal was already that we saw the Prime Minister promoting the course on AI, also publicly inviting every public official to just kind of go through the course to understand a little bit more. I'm pretty sure you passed it already, so you know about it. And but there's like obviously opposite sides on that, and I don't think, like, not to be like Mislav's advocate or anything, but it's not one of those just leave us the heck alone and we'll do whatever we want and then we'll come to you kind of things. It's more what is physically possible. Because sometimes, and as you said, like, the Digital Act and, the GDPR things and many of these things are super, super important. And obviously Europe was, a leading force in that. But it also created a lot of obstacles for many different innovators and many different companies.
Yeah,
Being, that's one of those things that always somehow needs to be in balance. And I agree with you. Sometimes those experiments are a complete waste of time, but probably the professor can tell you there were many, many failed experiments in those 12 years. And I don't think they were, a waste of time, because they probably learned a lot from also all the failures, I'm sorry.
I mean,
well.
I may say something that Misla is going to like.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's try that. I haven't seen anybody do that yet. But.
I mean, the European Commission talks a lot about trustworthy AI.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the buzzword. Trustworthy AI, it was coined because it wants to dispel the myth that this AI that's going to come is going to change our lives. And especially in the context, we have to always look at things in the context of what's happening. With the recent whistleblower, testifying in front of American Congress, we could see what happens when AI is applied without any oversight. Okay, so there are certain things that happen that have repercussions on our society and our young people and so on. So there is, it's enough to have like one story like that to have masses of people, because of the social networks and how information circulates today, for have masses of people going, oh, AI is terrible. But my point is, there will be a lot more positive stories about AI, and there are already. So let me just say that I find that I understand when you read all these documents that are coming from the Commission, they seem to be very rigid. And I understand how you feel about seeing that, but I think they would welcome your feedback. And, I'll be there to give feedback with you and to talk to you more about how we can make it work better.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a few minutes left, and I would like to use it and take Ivana's initiative and say, if we were to form some sort of future Croatian AI regulatory sandbox alliance, would you, Professor, and your university like to be part of it and kind of join this alliance and try to see if we can create some sort of testing facilities, create this dialogue, meet more often? Željko will take care of the catering and the rooms and everything else.
Okay, definitely. I was participating in some of the world committees concerned about the regulating things around the AI and the robotics and the legal issues, safety and everything else, interdisciplinary groups and so on. But listening your discussion, I don't want to be negative, but let's be honest, I don't know how to express to be decent. First of all, we shouldn't be naive, okay? We all agree that regulations should be based on understanding the technology. Yeah. All the misunderstanding lead us to the somewhere in bottleneck and somehow preventing the development. First of all, I would like not to have a regulation if it is bad. It's very dangerous to have a bad regulation, definitely. And finally, what I would like to say, first of all, I don't want to be naive. The final regulation will be designed by profit and big corporations. Forget it. That will be point. On that. So, if we want to somehow to make AI naked, we started to get naked today, without manicure, apart from this kind of technology, you know, which is very complex, you know, this is we call physical or motoric intelligence. It's very complex because our body is very complex, hundreds of muscles, and we need years to learn how to control our body. We start to learn it even before we're born, you know, but I mentioned that our Rona took almost 10 years, but this technology took more than 20 years to be developed, you know. But apart from this kind of intelligence, the most of AI apps are actually simple, even stupid classifiers. Even we are talking about deep learning or whatever, you know, they are very, very stupid. You can take the most sophisticated AI image analysis software, but unmistakably this software can recognize the things, you know. But at the end of the day, this software does not know what the object represents in cultural way, in context way, and definitely, you know. And okay, why should we be worried about this, you know, if it's so stupid, you know? Okay, there is a point. It's autonomy. The modern AI, machine learning methods, they're autonomous, beyond our comprehension, you know? And there is a space where we are losing control. And that's something what is scary, you know? Okay. As I mentioned, there is the reason there is a lot of committees all around the world trying to find a solution, how to control the thing. You know, it's very complex to answer on this question, but let me to simplify. Two main issues. For example, safety. You can tell, okay, if you are talking about AI, then we need, let me simplify, only the emergency button, the way how we can shut down the things if something goes wrong, you know? Okay, and regarding the reliability, we need the AI which has explainability, that can tell you, talk to you, how this magical AI found the solution, how found the decision and something like that. We need the AI to communicate with the environment, not a silent or sneaky agent or something like that.
Okay, thank you very much. And Martina, would A1, and would you be willing to meet again and discuss some opportunities for cooperation?
I think that I already answered yes. I think that we can find a solution. We have like not one, we have like 5 regulators who are crossing what we are doing and who are checking what we are doing, cross-checking what we are doing within the company. But I think that we can create an ecosystem where these kind of use cases with startups can be made. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, like the course, the Elements of AI course was a good start, but maybe we could do some workshops and show what AI can do and where it really. Sorry. Yeah.
No. I just wanted to quote Daniel. I don't know if he's here still. He said, he pointed right. We have to think about the average customer. How does he or she see it? Does he or she understand it? And whether he or she accept to be a part of this pilot. I think that we can find people, I mean, it depends on the use case of AI, but this is, I would say, the core. Of course, government, support of the government, but also awareness.
Absolutely. And Goran, so how are you already at a stage where you can cooperate with others, or, you know?
We are cooperating through CroAI, and we supported some initiatives, and also we are interacting with various ministries that are in charge of regulation adjustments. But also what I can stress, this, sometimes even having support from top of government does not necessarily mean that the adjustments will be efficient, because usually when you lower it down to operational level, some bottlenecks appear. So I believe that there should be some instructions from top down to this ministry's level to include businesses, startups, to share with them their suggestions so they can act in that way, because otherwise it will be a very, very slow process.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think Ivan and Mislav talked enough. So I want you to save all your questions for the coffee break, because we're not going to prolong it any longer. And I hope to see, especially Ivan and Mislav, very soon, again together with Goran, Martina, and Professor. Thank you very much. So we can continue this conversation and try to take it any further. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is everybody here? Are you ready to continue with the conference? It's time for sharing some medals and how they got those medals.
Go, Davor. I don't know, can you hear me? Okay, so we're going to wrap up a project, long-term project, I hope, that we kicked off a year ago. Same place, same people, same everything. I think it was on the 15th. Now it's 14th of October. It's a Croatian AI League. And basically, the slides are in Croatian. I apologize. This is like recycling from the last years, of course. So basically, we want to have like 1 to 2 different kind of tasks that we're going to give to the students. But they want to be like something uncommercial and with some kind of social impact. And the reason why we want to do it is because there are a lot of competitions about AI, machine learning and everything, but if they're looking on a global level, it's very difficult for the student to reach like top 100 because they're just like too competitive. So we wanted to make something local to actually to be able to find out the local talent and then to use the mentorships and all kinds of stuff to actually grow that talent to become like the future leaders in the field. And I won't talk much about it, but I will thank sponsors because that would not be possible without, of course, Infobip, Infinum, and Photomat, and of course, the companies related to them. They were the first one to actually offer financial support, but also support in marketing and logistics. They offered the mentors, and they, of course, offered the internships for all the students that are qualifying for this. If you remember, probably most of you don't because last year was much, much smaller due to COVID and everything. The task was actually quite fun to do. It's a part of a research project and also conservation project of dolphins in the Adriatic. So we're collaborating with the Institute Blue World. They provided us with huge data sets about the pictures of the dolphin. And the end goal of that research is actually to be able to take a photo of the dolphin and to actually recognize it. Is it a mate, ante, or whatever? Of course, that would be a little bit too difficult and too ambitious for students. So we actually, OneDrive is not working right now. But what we decided actually to do the first step of it and actually to do something called instant segmentation, to actually be able to figure out exactly where the dolphin is on the picture. I will not tell you much details about it because we're going to hear the talk about the winning entry. And hopefully I will click to the next slide. Maybe not. Just next slide, please. And now, without further ado, we're going to give those beautiful medals designed by Siniša Mareković, very famous for doing the medal designs. So I'm going to ask my dear colleague, Heidi. She's going to give a award. I'm going to be the hostess this time to break some stereotypes that we usually see in this kind of awards. So please, next slide to see the winners. Because I cannot do it. Oh, I can. I can. So thank you. First of all, please, big applause for Jozo Čačić from FAIR. He was like, as you can see from the results. Please come. No. I'm the hostess.
Thank you.
We're going to do it properly.
Polagano za slike.
There we go.
Big applause, please. Okay, next I'm going to invite Lucia. Lucia, please. Okay, Marko and Josip. Oh, Josip is here, please. Josip.
Da, hoćemo.
Bravo, Marko! And finally, Bruno from Algebra. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. And now, Jozo, please, if you can just give us a lecture about your work. And we're going to take a lot of pictures later, but you can sit down now. Thanks. Jozo, please.
Is the microphone working? Thank you.
You probably need this.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Jozo Čačić, and I will present my solution to the Dolphins Recognition Challenge. And I apologize in front if nerves get to me. So the goal of this challenge was to perform instant segmentation of dolphins. So basically, we had to detect each dolphin and associate its corresponding pixels to it. The evaluation criteria was intersection over union. So the intersection of the target mask and the prediction divided by their union. So basically, this overlapping region over the whole sum. The most recent state-of-the-art models use swim transformers, but due to computational resources, I was limited. So I had to seek combinations of object detection and segmentation. And we were also given a template for mask RCNN by the competition organizers. And that's basically also a state-of-the-art algorithm and combines good training time, accuracy, and implementation simplicity. I will try to give an overview of the mask RCNN. So a faster RCNN algorithm is a two-stage detector. The first stage is a region proposal network that proposes object bounding boxes. And the second stage extracts feature with a region of interest pooling and classifies and performs classification and bounding box regression on the region of interests. And the mask RCNN is also takes a two-stage approach. The first stage is identical to the faster RCNN. It's a region proposal network. And the second stage, in parallel to classification and bounding box regression, also uses a mask predictor. So basically, this part is a faster RCNN, and this part is a fully convolutional network. The dataset that was provided by the Blue World Institute of Marine Research and Conservation were images of dolphins, and the training and validation sets were split in a 4:1 ratio. This is a heat map location distribution of the dolphins on the images. Due to the dataset not being especially big, I was searching to expand it and found the NDD20 dataset, also of dolphins, and only took the images above the surface. It makes up a third of all training data, and while sifting through the dataset, I was searching for the distribution of location and the distribution of instances per image from the subset to be similar to the original datasets. And few dozen images were injected as outliers for generalization purposes on the cold parts of the heat map, because affine transforms on images led to performance losses. These were the data augmentation techniques used. As earlier said, affine transforms were omitted due to performance loss. Due to computational resources being scarce, the hyperparameters and the model were modest. The warm-up phase for the learning rate, since it has an regularization effect, the grid search returned the lowest regularization factor, or weight decay, and the learning rate policy used was the cyclic learning rate, since the problem most likely had a lot of local minima. The results were mean intersection over union of 51.67%. These are the images, and the model struggled when there were high reflections on the dolphins, distortions due to the dolphin being underwater and partially underwater, and sometimes when two dolphins were, when one dolphin was occluding another, the object detector was giving out mutant dolphins with two tails and so forth. And this is it.
Just a few words. I wanted to hear this first, because the first time I saw the results, I thought that we had some bug in evaluation software. I didn't think that the result was possible. And after I got his presentation, I actually realized why. I mean, the level of creativity to actually search for the new data set and augment what we gave to him, which was not that good on purpose, so actually we can see how far they can scale it, was just brilliant. So please, huge applause, because we're going to hear from these guys a lot.
So congratulations, bravo, bravo. So in our government we have people who are representing Croatian view on the AI in the European Union. He really wanted to be with us today, but unfortunately he couldn't. So he greeted us with a short video. Carlo Lessler.
Dear participants, dear organizers, dragi prijatelji. Unfortunately, due to my commitments here in the European Parliament, I could not be physically present in Zagreb today. It would be nicer in that way. But I'm glad to be able at least to address you by this video message as Vice Chair of the Committee on Artificial Intelligence here in the European Parliament. In time of rapid technological, climate and social change, we must all have time, focus, but also courage to move away from our everyday fragmented bubbles and try to think strategically and coherently about key issues of the future. Digital technology, which is affecting our lives more and more deeply, will dominantly shape the decade ahead in Europe. This is why today, more than ever before, we need to work together and start talking openly about what it means for Croatia, for the EU, and for the world. Digital transformation of societies is at the very core of the European policies in this mandate of the European Commission, but we should also not shy away from the fact that we need to urgently move into a higher gear with this transition. Artificial intelligence opens up a world of completely new possibilities, and it is necessary to agree on framework which will protect our fundamental rights, but also the innovation potential in Europe. This is what we are trying to do in the Parliament, also through the Special Committee on Artificial Intelligence, where we are aiming to define a long-term European plan in the field of AI and to encompass different professional, regional and institutional perspectives. Croatia is today closely linked to this European context. Already today, we have companies and people that are successfully competing on the international market. The record funds that are available to Croatia in the coming years will be an unprecedented engine of development and convergence. But we have to keep pushing, changing, and understanding that time is also a big factor. This obviously has geopolitical connotations and can be seen as a geopolitical race as well. Dear participants, in this context, we all have a responsibility to prepare Croatia, to prepare Europe for the new times and to use the opportunities opened by digital transition. That's why I wish you open and interesting discussions and a successful conference. Thank you.
Šećer na kraju. Heidi, before we take the lunch break, she's going to talk about the unique overview of the Croatian AI landscape, including stakeholders, AI companies, startups, academy, and research institutions. So Heidi Chenan, it's your turn. Opa.
Hello. This is the old version. If you're seeing, that's October 2020. Because last year we ventured on this journey of trying to map out the ecosystem, the AI ecosystem in Croatia. Because you know what they're saying, if you don't know where you're going, you're not there yet, but you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you are. So that was kind of the idea behind it, to really see where we are, where we stand today, and where it is that we want to go. So already this version took months and months of trying to figure out who are all the players on the Croatian AI scene. So from the companies and startups that are dealing with it, from the traditional bigger institutions that are implementing AI, that are the early bird or early adopters, and of course the supporting ecosystem, so all the other institutions that are playing an important role in the AI scene. Of course, even then we were kind of aware that we probably missed many, and that is why we already said back then, this is something that's an ongoing project and it's continuous and it's going to be continuously updated. And this year, so this is from last year, let's not go that much into it. But this year we wanted to go even deeper, you know, to scratch the surface even more and to find out many more information about what is going on, what are the incomes of the companies, identifying the investments, what are the problems, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities they're seeing. So I know that many have received a very lengthy questionnaire, and we do apologize about that, but you know, without it, we wouldn't be able to make all this happen. But before I go deeper, this was a project that lasted, and it's going to last even more. But now, the first version of analyzing all the incoming data was, it took almost, gosh, 4, 5, 6 months, like that. And I would like to ask you to give a big applause to Martina. Martina, please stand up. Because I seem to be taking all the glory by presenting this, but it is Martina who really did the heavy load and heavy lifting of trying to figure out who to contact, how to invite everyone, how to force them to actually fill the questionnaire and be persistent and sometimes, you know, boring enough. I know, because she had to remind me to do it several times. And then after that, you know, to really collect all that information, take it out, and make it into something that we're going to see today. So my little cheat sheet is here because there is a lot of things that we've seen. So, yes, of course, this is, again, possibility that not everyone is involved or included in the landscape. So please, if you see that someone is missing, do let them know to come and apply, because from now on, this landscape will be updated on a monthly basis. And to be fair, we've seen a lot of development and a lot of boom just in the past year. So last year we were able to identify almost 200 organizations in total that are involved in the ecosystem. And this year, altogether, over 330 actually. The startups that we identified that are AI startups last year, it was around 72 of them. And now we've managed to identify 115 startups. So once again, if you know another startup, please do let them know to contact us. As you can see now, the logos have become much smaller. And I don't know, maybe at some point they won't be able to fit in a screen. What do you think, Jan? So it is the popularly called logo graveyard, but we're not going to call it a graveyard. It's a very beautiful display of all the players. Because the total number of companies and startups has gone from almost 100 to over 180, so almost a double. And we've tried to kind of categorize them, again, on some principles, based on the industries that they're working in or involved in, or, of course, if that wasn't really possible, because a lot of startups are maybe working across various industries, then to use kind of an AI tools or the type of data or technology that they're using. So it's not a fixed method. It's something that is evolving, and maybe next year we will have some other version, but this is as good as it was possible to do for now. We've identified also more companies as early adopters, so which is good. Of course, majority of them do come from the industries that are traditionally early adopters, so financial and telecommunications industries. But we do see some other industries that are, opening up that you wouldn't really think of as, when you think of AI, that you would think of those industries. And enablers and extended ecosystems, so a number of supporting institutions, as I would like to call them. So those that are in education, so academia, and in research, they're supporting the development of AI in Croatia. And that has also grown from almost 80 to over 120. And there is an increase of academic institutions that we've been able to identify, but also new incubators, accelerators, and also the VC funds. So we're also welcoming those because we need financing. And when we're talking about VC funds and investments, so the AI scene in the past year has generated over 3 billion kunas of revenues. And they've also managed to attract over 5 billion kunas of investments. Of course, predominantly the usual suspects that we know much about, so Infobip, Rimac, Agrevi, Photomat. But also lately we've seen a lot of news and, again, new companies that are also tracking investments, such as Robotics AI, so our last year's startup pitch winner, Memgraph, Parkleo, and some others. We also wanted to see, where the startups are managing to find their first customers. And again, as it could be expected, because it's the industries that are the earliest adopters, it's again the IT sector, of course, telecommunications, finances, but also e-commerce as well. And when it comes for startups from Croatia, the majority of them start on the market of EU, which I dare say is also kind of expected. But then, there's this challenge of reaching out to the rest of the world and other markets such as the US or Asia. When it comes to, again, finding capital to finance the startup operations, the majority of it is still coming from local, but then, of course, with investments in VC funds coming from all over the world, that is also starting to change slowly. The majority of the capital comes from private capital, but of course, one of the challenges is to ensure investments from business angels at those earliest stages of development of a startup, and that is something that's also been recognized. And there is an initiative, as we know, from CISEX, CroAI, HUP, as well, to try to introduce tax breaks and tax reliefs to angel investors so that they would mitigate the risk of the investments, but also enable many more investments to many more startups, so we can maybe have even more unicorns than we have today. The connectivity with the, of course, with the global market is predominantly based on networking, which is also not surprising because that's one of the beauties from what I see of the IT scene in Croatia. It's very closely connected, and there are a lot of sharing of experiences and of contacts as well. Women founders and co-founders, again, it is a tad better than last year. Okay, pur si muove. But I do hope that next year we will have maybe, at least number 2 as the first digit. So again, where are my girls at? Come on. You can become co-founders and founders of AI startups, even if you don't have tech background, once again. I'm the living proof of that. But one amazing thing was this, that when it comes to teams, so the AI teams, majority of the companies have said that they do have women as integral part of their AI teams. So I'm very optimistic about that, and I do hope we'll see more of them as well. So the challenges, the biggest challenge, of course, is to find AI experts, but I dare say that's not just a local challenge, that's a global challenge, because there's a shortage of them in general. And okay, especially when they want to scale and they want to go abroad, to find also employees abroad. And again, something probably very surprising to you as well. So when someone's trying to find talent, again, predominant way of finding them is through networking. Word of mouth is very important. And then there are some other ways. This was a bit interesting to see. So the cooperation of startups with the academia is mostly and predominantly done through science or R&D projects, through some internships, or organizing events. But there is a lot of room for improvement because, as you can see, almost half of them are not collaborating with academia whatsoever. So I think we should try to figure out what's the underlying cause of that and how that can be fixed. Again, okay, Zagreb is the center of Croatia, so not very unexpected that majority of startups are located in Zagreb, but we are seeing many more other places popping up as, where startups are being organized and launched. So yeah, there has been quite an interesting development in the AI scene in the past year. There has been a sort of an AI boom that is very optimistic, and I really like to see that, and I hope again that we'll have even many, many more of them coming in the next year. And I dare say it's also a bit of a proof that the initiative of education about AI, so elements of AI, have also contributed to creation and acceptance of AI projects more, and initiatives such as what we've heard today, for example, AI Center in Lipik, where they're creating new startups and new experts in this field. So I really do hope that next year we will have such tiny logos that you won't be able to recognize any of them, because that would mean that our startup scene has really blossomed and that we're really getting some momentum, such as some other countries have experienced as well, such as Estonia, for example, with their first unicorn, Skype. We are seeing similar momentum on Croatian AI and startup scene in general with our unicorns. So let's keep the momentum going. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Once again, it's time for some panel. Again, moderated by Jan Štedl. Jan, I would like you to introduce your guests, just so I don't get anything wrong this time, again.
It's okay. This is a nice way to mitigate the responsibility. I usually do it in a way that they present themselves, not to run into your problems. But okay, let me start with Mr. Davor Runje. Please, would you come to the stage, sir? Davor, as you all know, is the co-founder of an AI startup called ERT, which has made some waves throughout media and everywhere on the scene with their state-of-the-art models. And he's also serving as the president of Croatia's Independent Software Exporters Association called CISEX. Mr. Ratko Mutavdzic, would you please come to the stage? You all know Ratko. Ratko also works as, are you head of HUP ICT or? Member, one of the esteemed members. And Mr. Damir Sabol, please, would you come to the stage? You all know Damir. Damir founded Microblink and Photomat and all sorts of things, so I don't need to introduce him anymore. And Mr. Krešo Žmak, if he's here, from Infobip, VP Products. Thank you very much for joining. As you can see, a very gender-balanced panel today. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, but we'll try to. Yeah, I know. Well, we had Heidi present State of Croatian AI and the AI boom here, and we saw that there's still room to grow for women to enter the field and also to become co-founders and founders of it. But we also have seen some really, really interesting results in terms of the number of startups that's been starting to pop up everywhere around Croatia. We've seen a huge wave of popularity of AI with the elements of AI course and everything else. And the idea of this panel is actually to talk a little bit about what this actually means for all of us and where the scene is heading. And so my first question is for Davor, of course, because Davor, when we did this research, we had a lot of issues, and we encountered it really is difficult, I must say. And talking on the last panel also with Ivana, so it's not like the AI scene before CroAI was founded is really like out there and was really having this culture of dialogue with anybody else. We've seen it also from the cooperation with the academia. So it's still, most of us are kind of holding to ourselves, having our eyes on the outside markets, trying to export, dealing with our own problems. But CISEX has done also a lot of research, and you published some of that this year. Could you share a little bit more about that, what you identified? And I know Tajana did it, and you can all, clap Tajana and not Davor for presenting it. But maybe you could share a bit more about what were some of the findings, some of the most interesting findings.
Okay, I'll talk about myself a bit later, but this whole theme about cooperation with academia is actually, I think, quite a big problem. Yeah. Things are happening here. So here we have Matija Srbić from FAIR, I think somewhere I saw him. Basically, this summer we actually wrote one of the joint funding proposal together with FAIR and Algebra as a CISEX to actually bring those deep tech expertise that actually exist in our university to commercial entities that are good in doing development, but not necessarily research, and connecting university that is excelling at research, but they're not really good in developing because that's just not their business model or the point of existence. So things are happening here. One of the problems, structural problem that we actually have, there's a lot of cooperation between CISEX and HUP and HGK and all other, and CroAI and other, I would say, civil society entities. We're trying to get the IT or digital society or whatever the name will be as one of the vertical components into our strategy of smart specialization. Tajana can tell you far more about it, but actually the problem is if you try to get some kind of collaboration between university and some commercial entity, if it's not in one of those verticals, whatever they are right now or they're changing it, you're out of luck and you cannot do it. And basically we are fighting for anything that is digital, not necessarily just IT, but whatever is like a new technology. If it's working out by itself, let's just like be able to fund it with EU funds, not the Croatian one. But the problem is without that main document that we as a country have to deliver, we cannot actually apply for EU funds, and this is something that we are fighting for a long time, and everybody here is involved in this fight one way or the other. And so these are like the big things that are happening. Once we get that thing off the table, I think the collaboration will improve, because then we can directly go to university. We can say, okay, we need a researcher for that kind of particular area. We're going to do the development. You're going to do the research. Let's get the funding. Let's kickstart it. Some of those things will, of course, go nowhere, but we need to increase the number of those kind of projects. And if you look at just the numbers of university, both Algebra and FAIR and probably everybody else, they're growing in capacity, in research capacity, number of students. So there's a lot of talent here, but right now we're not really using it optimally.
So you see that as one of the major obstacles that if now would be solved to get it like really horizontal?
It's one of the biggest one. I would not say the only one. We have plenty of work to get there, but that's something that is like really right now on the table, because right now we are in the process of defining the new strategy, which will be valid until like 2029 or something like that. So we're like, it's like almost a decade.
Yeah,
so,
but
and it's happening now in these few months, not like.
No, absolutely. And I think it's like, I wouldn't say it's the first time, but I think it was very remarkable to see that all the organizations, so with HOOP and C6 and CroAI and the whole tech scene kind of gathered together and was really quick to react and really push for this to happen. So we definitely hope to see.
Yeah, we have joint meetings, I would say, like on a weekly level now, to actually coordinate between ourselves and because it's such an important thing. It's not, we all have a little bit different agendas. We are more like oriented to export and the startup scene, and we want to see Croatian companies being globally successful. We are not really that much interested in working with the government in the local market. That's not what we do. I mean, some companies are doing, but that's not the primary reason that we exist. But these kind of things are like no-brainer for the whole industry. Like we need to get this kind of funding, EU funding. We're not asking any money from the government. We're actually getting just to have the equal access to EU funds as any other country in the Europe. Because apart from Croatia, I think only Cypr doesn't have some kind of IT vertical in their smart specialization. Yeah, it's a big thing, actually.
No, I think it's a big thing, and I think it's very welcomed by the fact that your report came out, and then we see this kind of research really pointing out in the direction that the scene is growing. It's not just a few scattered out. But that's what I wanted to ask Damir. So Damir, if you now look at the whole, as Heidi called it, like the graveyard of logos, because this actual visualization doesn't serve any other purpose than just to show that there are many dots there and that there are many startups popping up. When you started way back when, you know, it was not the case, or was it?
When I started, startup was not something that was...
It was even recognized as...
Yeah, really it wasn't recognized, of course. So like, it was totally different environment. It was 25 years ago that I started actually already working on building a startup. So it wasn't recognized, funding was not available. Government funding was actually not available, I guess. I think it wasn't. Maybe for some people, but for me it wasn't. So it is actually a dramatically different environment today that we had, I don't know, 25 years ago or 20 years ago or even 15 years ago. So government funding, EU funding is available. Grants are available. So we used several grants to actually help our research. And there are some good things. And then at one point we've decided not to use government grants because we thought this makes no sense. We could have, like, it was possible for us to get several million euros, I guess, for this project. But our conclusion was that it is actually bad for us to take several million euros. So if it is bad for you to take several million euros, that you would need to ask yourself why somebody wouldn't like to take this money. And the reasons were, this is very bureaucratic process, and we would need to say today what we want to develop in 3 or 4 or 5 years, which is totally impossible. So everybody knows that, and everybody will actually, allow you to adjust on this path. But it is a problem. And then we thought this is too expensive for us to take several million euros, and it is opportunity cost that we are missing here. So we decided not to take this money. And we received a lot of like significant investment from venture capital funds, and the difference is really dramatic. So our investors, and I think it's much better source of funding. Like if you can get grants that will allow you to bootstrap, which is also valuable. We used some grants in the beginning to help us, and it was good. It was helpful, but then later with this bigger money, it was much better for us to go with investors. And our investors are telling us that we shouldn't like spend our time on reports. Any reports, they are telling us, you should do your job and build your company, build your product, and don't worry about reports. And these are millions. We raised like $40 million in Photomet, and it was like, no, there is my responsibility as a CEO to do it right, but they don't require actually. Okay, now they start, but it is now after $40 million they start, but so it is totally different. I think that small grants are very useful. Grants that are not bureaucratic are very useful, but actually real things are happening in like when you start building commercially and raise money from real investors.
Mm-hmm. But how much do you feel, so Davor mentioned, of course, I mean, if you're an AI startup or a startup from Croatia, you somehow naturally and logically have the idea that you want to go out into the world. So you don't have this misconception, I'm going to build a business serving the Croatian market, which is obviously huge and very demanding. How much do you think is necessary for a startup at this early stage to get some sort of local client in the very beginning? Or are they naturally able to go out? I mean, even from your experience, did you have to like do some of the things here just to prove your case or the idea, the hypothesis, and then kind of scale out?
If you can do it here, you can do it anywhere. So it's like, it's a good approach. Yeah, we had this approach. We started here, and actually this is our proof of concept locally, and it was good approach. But actually because of this, we didn't understand really the potential of like the global market, but it was good. So you can do it here locally, but today it's like, do you have to do it locally? If you want to launch something globally, then you can go globally, and you will find your test customers somewhere else before in Croatia. But if you have something specific that you need local deployment, it is good. So it depends. There is no rule.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sorry, Zavor, yes?
I just wanted to say, just to completely agree, that it's even easier to go global today because the things changed since 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like today, like remote work, remote customers, remote clients, you used to, for in B2B business at least, you had to go to customer. Now you don't really. So it changed. So even if even in the early stage, you can just decide to go in some other country because you're just going to call people, email them, have conference calls. It's a different ballgame. It's definitely a different ballgame than 2 years ago, I would say.
Yeah, but what do you think? Like, so Ratko, for example, at HUP ICT, you also, I mean, you've been around for many years and you talk to a lot of these people. What do you think is like the most important thing for startups from Croatia or companies from Croatia to make a good case outside? Is it that you hear and talk to them and they say, okay, they don't really take us serious if we're from Croatia, this is some small Eastern European country, or is that not even the case anymore? Because the ICT industry obviously seems to be very successful and a very healthy part of this economy. Is this perceived abroad as well?
I don't think that anyone has an issue today with the company coming from Croatia. I mean, these guys can actually testify this, right? Maybe now the issue is that maybe we spend a little bit more time than some other countries, or startups from other countries, proving the case. And I think one of the major issue that we have is how fast we can build and sustain ecosystems around anything, including AI, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this is 5th year of this conference, and we have a feeling that we are pushing AI, like building this ecosystem and so forth. And still, if you think like in triple helix or something like that, like we are still missing some of the pieces over there to be very effective. And sometimes it reminds me like you're buying a car, tires for your car, and then you're buying different ones, right? And they have a limitation on the speed, and so you're trying to drive really fast, but one of your tires is limited to 80 kilometers per hour. Then that's the maximum you can really drive, right? When you're building something like that, this ecosystem. And I think that speed is still, we have a lot of things to do, right? Just to give you an example, and Angeliko is going to hate me for this one, but I understand the budget behind the conference, right? And then this is a conference which is very much ecosystem conference, which is done by practically zero profit type of approach, right? Even if it shouldn't be like that one in the 5th year, right? So building the ecosystem is super, super hard. Now, what I'm in other countries, just because we have the opportunity to work with many of those, right? And Tomislav was presenting a little bit about the testbed framework in Estonia, right? That's driven by the government, right? It was not even driven by the community AI or ecosystem of startups and so forth. In the first place, that was driven by the government. It's purely government type of looking for the innovation work. So unfortunately or fortunately, that's a question, right? The ecosystem building task is left to the companies like Infobip and Remats and Photomat and ART, right, where they are like probably, and I don't want to speak on their behalf, they will, right? They are thinking about now, okay, now we did a huge thing and now we need to build a kind of ecosystem of other companies which we pull in, right, and which will work with us and we will expand through this one, which is in some of the countries actually a good role where the government, for example, plays. Right? Just think back, right, and Silicon Valley or whatever was kind of exploding, like how did that really explode?
Absolutely.
But that is the thing to look at, like, speed of ecosystem. That I think that's the biggest problem that we have.
No, absolutely.
If I can just add one little thing. So one of those things that are constantly coming up with, I don't know, analysis of the global World Bank and so on and so forth. So IT in Croatia is actually growing faster than any other industry, and we think it's fantastic. And then they tell us like, yeah, sure, but like IT in Croatia is like much smaller than in the rest of the Europe in the growth rate. And I said like, exactly this is the problem. Because, I mean, we get there eventually, all of us, but it takes much longer for us than what we would need in some other countries. And we really need to like start copy-pasting the best practices from around the world, especially from Europe. I mean, there are like good of them.
Yeah, one of those practices, I mean, especially you mentioned Silicon Valley, is actually the cooperation between the individual companies, sharing the knowledge, being there for each other. So to ask Croatia as well, I mean, the question, can you make it from Croatia and be taken seriously, obviously, is like one big issue. Can you be taken from a small town of Vodnjan and then get out globally is obviously also a big yes. But now that you're there and you're an official unicorn, how do you see your role? How do you see, facilitating this whole market, this whole scene? I know we've been at Shift this year. We've seen a lot of things that you do, but maybe you could share a little bit about the mindset that is behind all of that.
Yeah, for starting, I think the speed is quite important in all what we are saying. So the speed of companies, developers, startups, that's crucial. To have a good product, but also to launch it fast, validate it, and then iterate. So that's the critical part for everybody here working in a startup or thinking of, or in a company. We are still in that mindset. So we are still super fast. We are still trying to launch big products under 3 months, and that's how we are still very competitive on the global market.
On the global market, yeah.
In terms of Croatia, I would say there are two main streams how Infobip is working. One is evangelization of AI, but also working with the government, Croatian organizations to implement processes, frameworks to grow the whole AI ecosystem. So that's one stream, which includes, and there have been talks even earlier today, legislation changes, sandbox frameworks, educational frameworks, working with government on some use cases and so on. So this is one big area that we are focused on, because historically we have always trying to help the community from starting from Vodnjan, but also now on the larger Croatian scale. And more importantly, the second direction is that we are building a platform and we are opening our platform. This is a big initiative for Q4 actually. In Infobip, where we want to open the platform so that startups, companies can start building on top of our platform, build solutions. In that way, we are opening the platform so an AI, you can build AI solution based on the data that there is with GDPR, of course, in mind. You can build personalization stuff and so on, chatbots, AI engines, and so on. So the idea is that we allow companies from Croatia, also through our startup hub, to have the availability to sell and to pitch to on the global scale. And this is, so we are always trying to be very practical, and this is a way how we are really trying to help companies to have the access to the whole world, actually.
Yeah, but we're now talking about kids that are 18, 19, 20 years old. So as Damir said, 25 years ago, I started a startup, and if you would have said to somebody, I'm starting a startup, they were like, what is that? It's probably something shady. You're trying to do something illegal or who knows what. And nowadays you also do angel investments and many of these different things, trying to support people that are kind of aligned with the mission and vision. As example, the latest investment was into STEMI, I think, right? Which also Infobip kind of supported through the whole AI chatbots around the schools. But what can you learn from that? So what do you get in return from that? How does this relationship work? Because it's obviously a quid pro quo kind of thing.
It is. When I invest money into startups, I just forget about it immediately. That's my approach. But it's like I invested into STEMI because I like them. They are actually building something important, and I think they will. This is like important. If you're building something important and something good, then usually can be good business. That's my approach here, and I like them. They are like very patiently building, and I think I can recognize good startups now. So that was this is the reason, and I want to help them. That's the biggest motivation.
You obviously have already some recipe of an algorithm. Maybe you could share with us. So when you say I can recognize a good startup,
you spend 25 years in startup world building companies, then you can recognize.
I am sure of that, but what would you say? Like, what are the top three things?
But you need passion. You need to have like a big vision. You need to execute. You need to survive. You need to gather a good team. So if you see some of these things happening, then it is a good startup. And this still doesn't guarantee you will make money on it. But these motives are not financial. My motives were never financial. I always try to build the best product. We are now trying to build the best product in the world. It is not easy, of course. It's hard. But I would say that technology part is not as hard. Everything else is. We have really talented people. We are giving opportunity to young people also to join, to learn. And I think that's our biggest, it's not our goal just to build things, and it's our goal to also educate people. And the best way to actually influence this environment and AI scene is to actually educate people and give them opportunity to build with us. And this is what we are doing, and we'll continue with this. And I think that's very important. I am not a big, I'm a bit tired with government support and expecting this. I'm in different situation. It can be really helpful when you start, and this will be my recommendation. If you can get a grant of 500,000 kunas or 200, 300,000, 500,000, 1 million, something like that, and this is possible, take it and try to build something. But I'm not a fan of in later stages. I think that then companies become dependent on grants and not actually building something for the market. And this can be seen with startups. So startups and companies that can do it by themselves, they will do it by themselves. They will find investors, and some companies will focus. And I know that there are companies that are focusing on getting financing and not actually building product for the market. And when you are successful, when you have good traction, it is not difficult to raise money from world-class investors, and there is competition. So government has competition in actually handing out money. So yeah, it's like interesting learnings. I would say, like if you can focus on the market and share this knowledge, give opportunities to young people to join. I think this is for me, that was the best way for us as a company to influence and help this scene.
Absolutely. But so also what we saw from the research, I mean, like these are some of the issues that are, if you would take a look at what the whole global startup market is actually experiencing, is always this shortage of AI talents and stuff like that. And I think also the idea of how difficult or easy it is actually to break out, from your own borders. And I think you guys say that it's a question of mindset. It's a question if you believe that you can do it, if you want to do it, if you go globally. You also mentioned it is possible. But how to address, in your view, or I know you had also discussions around that in CISEX, like how do we get more talent involved? How do we get the market to grow and have more people that can, be employed here, and not to have all these people go, I don't know, work somewhere abroad once they finish studies?
Actually, I think it's actually even worse today than it was just like a few years ago. So a few years ago, you actually had to move somewhere. And if you wanted to work for, I don't know, Google in Zurich, or you go to Facebook to London, you actually had to move your family over there. And that's a big thing. I mean, it's not easy. But what is happening today, and we can actually even feel it this year by looking into statistics of, for example, these paušalni obrti are starting to grow again. Single band companies are starting to grow again. And the reason is not because we have too many like small startups. No, actually, there's a lot of push of the big global companies just hiring people to do remote work. They take the best talent, not juniors. They take like people with 5, 10, 15 years of experience. They pay them a lot because they don't have to pay any taxes. It's a company now, it's not a salary. So even without people moving abroad, which was a big problem, now it's even worse because some of them will go to London in Facebook because they want to feel the London life, and it's understandable when you're young. But also the older, the most crucial parts in our company, like the senior people that can actually deliver the project, that can build juniors, they're easily taken by like a lot of money. Not like 20% more, but like double, 3 times as much. And it's becoming really, really a big issue. So the only solution is actually to be globally competitive. Like you have to either be Infobip, or you have to be Photomat, or one of those companies that actually can hire anybody anywhere in the world, including in Croatia. But they will hire in Croatia. And what is even more important, they will give to community far more than foreign companies. Because you will not see Google building campuses here, but you're going to see Infobip building it. You're going to see Rimac. You're going to see many companies. Now Orca is building one in Osijek. Actually, when you have local funders, they give a lot more back to the community than just people that are working here. And to make it globally competitive, one of the biggest problems is actually not when you're big enough and you go to US and get money. I mean, Infobip showed, Photomat showed. And so when you're really at that level, the whole world is your playing field. The problem is when you're looking for the first 100K euros or $500,000, because this is actually quite difficult in Croatia right now. One of the solutions is either government's fund, tax breaks for investors. I'm going to have to leave soon because I actually have one meeting with investor, one global VC fund that wants to invest like in a bunch of Croatian companies. Actually, they said like, could you find like 4 to 5 like Infobips in Croatia for us? And I was like, yeah, sure. Like,
sure. Let me just go in my pocket and pull them out.
Give me a break. There are unique stories. And we actually have to increase the number of these small startups surviving this $500,000 phase, because then we're going to have 10 million, 100 billion. And actually getting, like, if I had 4 Infobips today, they would be easy to fund, actually. But we cannot generate them because there's too many of them actually die in this process. And you can see it, I don't know, we are all mentors in algebra, in BERT, in all kinds of incubators. A lot of talent, they go there, they spend a year, they do a lot of things, and they are looking for $500,000, but they don't have revenue, they don't have... So in US or anywhere in Europe, they could easily get funding. Over here, unless you have some like financial tracking, it's very difficult. and then they start doing other things, and then the whole thing breaks apart because you need money.
So I think that's like the most endangered level of
yeah, actually, because the local money is always financing the early stage. Early stage startup is always financed by local investors. But there has to be some kind of money flowing in this like early stage, mostly going to go nowhere kind of things. And then later, if you are InfoBip and Photomat, you'll be fine.
Sure.
That's not a problem.
Obvious. But Ratko, so how do you see, I mean, the whole fact with the financing? I know like Microsoft also had many different initiatives trying to work with smaller scale startups, trying to even give them the ability to, you know, participate in hackathons, get some sort of use cases, get some sort of materials to be able to present themselves better, their idea, what they do. Do you also feel like that is the most endangered level of the whole scene here in Croatia?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you look at the big companies, I think it's obvious that even if they do have like investment programs and so forth, they kind of limit those programs usually, right, to the things that they can actually benefit from, right? It's not just like, okay, people will do something in the cloud and then there will be consumption. We can take the example of MemGraph, which just, they got, it was led by Microsoft 2012. Because they're doing something which is potentially also very important to the things that we do on the broader scale. So all these big companies, including in Croatia, the big ones that we work with, they would always have cases which kind of belong to them because the data is over there, user scenarios are over there, and so forth, right? So maybe what we are missing kind of cases and environments in the broader scale. So that's why Bird and all these basically incubators are super important because they can give you like broader scale of, you know, cases and data and whatever, including the investments, right? And then we still, I don't know, probably 10 years ago it started. Like we still cannot say, okay, there's a abundant number of those who actually do that, right? Just to comment a little bit on education and the capacity, I think that's now a significant problem, right? Now I can tell you that in my small company, at any point of time, there's like 50,000 open positions, 50,000, right? And it's super hard to get people. It became super hard, right? So, and not just for us, for everybody. And these mid-sized type of companies like are in way much better position than the big ones. So things are very much shifting, and it's not just about building a bigger scale of, I don't know, universities and programs which educate people. One of the things which doesn't work for us is how international we are. I just count the number of foreign students in Croatia and think about the internationalization of the whole thing and how much our students are learning, you know, in the terms of next day they will have a startup companies, they need to go out, they need to be aggressive, they need to work in the foreign markets and so forth, when, you know, like 95% of students are basically Croatian students in our universities, right? So when I was talking about triple helix and you know, the thing that needs to kind of be built in terms of ecosystem, there's so many factors over there today, and it's not getting easier. I would say that would align to what Davor said, like, yeah, today we have even more issues to deal with.
Sure. And this is a problem, like what we see is like, there is not enough experience in Croatian market to actually build world-class products. So when you have opportunity to actually be and that's my advice. If you have opportunity to be part of the company that works globally, try that and try to learn, because like sure also with InfoBip is like a global company, and they actually nobody knew about that. I went to Mobile World Congress like 5 years ago, and there were like big, you know, like
big stand, huge
big stand, like right next to Google's, and like.
Who are these guys?
Oh. It was 6 years ago. Like I knew about InfoBip, but then I was also surprised. And nobody knew, and they are a global company from the beginning, actually. Which actually great initial strategy that give them a great acceleration. So I would say it is important, and we can see, you know, like lack of experience that we see that from Silicon Valley. And we can actually, we're trying to bring, we have employees, we have 15, 16 employees there, and we can then try to actually bring this experience here, and that's great opportunity. But it is very difficult to find, you know, the right experience here. What we don't have issues with, there are really talented technical people that we can hire, of course not enough. It's like business. And of course you would want, engineers and pay them 5,000 kunas per month. Sure. You would want great engineers, sure. But this is business, there is it's normal that it is difficult and hard to hire good people, even and not only engineers. I think good waiter, and it's impossible to find. So of course, if you pay them 3 times what you want to pay them, no problem to find them. So this is absolutely, we need to be international, and we need to be global and globally competitive, because everything else will not work. And then regarding size of IT in Croatia, of course it is not as big as it should be, because the rest of the economy is not big or strong as it should be, and IT this directly correlates with strength of the real economy. Of course, old real economy. Economy is actually, IT is becoming real economy now. But these are normal things, and we need to understand where we are in this.
No, what I like about the fact is that, and you right. stated it I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years ago, maybe you really had to go, abroad to get this international experience, to be able to come back and said, I worked at some, global products, and I had some global market experience and stuff like that. And nowadays, really, you can go and work at Photomat, and you have phenomenal employer branding, and people get drawn to that. I know for a fact there is a guy called Marko Velic who used to work at Facebook and now came back. I think he leads your AI team, and we have him at another panel in a few days as well. And so when I talk to him, it's always the same thing. I wanted to do that. That's why I went to Facebook. I wanted to do something that is globally interesting and competitive, and now I have the ability to do it back in my hometown. Why wouldn't I use that ability? But maybe before it wasn't like that. And one other thing, I think you have around 50% of all employees in Photomat are students or something like that. I don't know if
we have that's specific for. Because we have a lot of content, and they create content and manage content, but we have a lot of students in our engineering also, and other departments, and this is important. It is very
so get them while they're young. That's kind of one of the approaches. But InfoBip, you're building the campus. You need to go get the money?
Yeah, not for me, unfortunately.
If you need to go get the money, of course you're excused. No problem. But Krešo, so you're now building campuses. You're now employing thousands and thousands of people. So how do you address that need? How do you employ them? How do you find them? Do you really get them? Once 2 years ago, I was in Vodnjan, and around the whole West, it was a very international team already back then. And when you show them pictures of the coast and history, and it probably is not very difficult to get them involved. Yeah. Thank you very much, Davor Runja. Please, let's all clap. So he can get the money for all of us. Davor, show me the money. Thank you, Davor. Is it easier because they get to Vodnjan? Now you're building a big campus in Zagreb. How does that work?
So I was silent for a while because this sounded like a promotional paid for InfoBip. Everybody's talking great thing, but I think Photomat is an exceptional company, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, agree.
Jokes aside, so we have the same challenges as everybody, as the colleagues mentioned. So I'm from products, and we are now hiring Portugal, Austin, Texas, Charlotte, London, St. Petersburg, Poland, all around the world. Because we cannot find this specific knowledge, which is product management, in Croatia. So there are no, I think, maybe on Algebra there is a course about product management. AI is the same thing. So there are not enough AI courses, I think, on the faculties. Engineers, yeah, we have, but there is again few companies in Croatia who are absorbing a lot of talent. So we are using as a teaser Vodnjan and look at the national park there, but it is we need to offer vision, interesting ideas, pay them on the grades that are international level. So that's it's not just the very nice view in
of course, especially Clara is not. I don't know if that's how nice of a view there is, but yeah, you probably need to offer some other things as well.
Yeah, and then following that, what is important that, and we are here working with the government, with Ivana here, with the sponsorship between Mr. Plenković, our CEO, Silvio, we are working in a few streams to bring up new stuff into the education, to work on the framework which will bring up new engineers, new data scientists, but also important other I don't know how to call this, profiles, which are today even not existing, but will be super interesting. I know for linguists, which are super important if you're doing AI and speech to text, text to speech.
Humanistic experts in general,
yes.
Right? Yeah.
So that's super important that we don't look just in because when we speak AI, first what comes to mind is
data scientists
data
or
scientists.
Exactly. Yeah,
and I can also say that we have good engineers, but IT and AI is not
the same thing.
Only no, it's not engineering. Mm-hmm. It is. A lot is engineering, but it is not only engineering. Mm-hmm. And like building products, it's like, so product management, that's like, I would say one of the biggest opportunities. So if you are actually good at AI, actually in product management
you can count
in AI.
No, yeah, okay. So yeah, okay, how much does InfoBeep offer? How much does Photoman offer?
No, but that's it. Like it's like. We can't offer because there are no people, like it's really, you can't get this experience, it's difficult. So actually you need to build this experience and find this actually path. And it's not only IT and engineering, you need technical knowledge. And then, so product management, design. So designing products that are based on AI, that's like not simple, it's quite difficult, and you need to get this experience. So design is very important because you can have the best technology. If design is like bad, then it won't look like the best technology. So then, you know, in the marketing, you need to make sure that user experience is great. So number and content that you are building, everything. So it's IT and AI are not only engineering, and then we need to understand that, and we need to build whole, you know, like holistic approach there and cover everything that is there.
I think it's a really good point. And so one of the actions of CroAI, now if we all, you know, advertised your companies enough, let me just use this opportunity and tell a little bit about what CroAI is planning for next year, is actually creating this sort of community of product managers and future, you know, AI product designers. Because we certainly do believe that engineers are super important, but we, as Damir stated, we see that the involvement of humanistic experts is extremely important.
And then once we have the engineers and data scientists and linguists and
sociologists, psychologists,
and so on, we need to create the framework where they can apply this knowledge, meaning, you know, easy things for the startups so that it can be faster. Where again, it's CroAI working on implementing some sandbox for an industry where these startups could be much faster in deploying their solutions with, you know, specific taxes or financial stuff, which would help them be again faster coming to the market, validating, and then iterating. Because again, as I said, it's crucial that they are super fast in validating, and there are some countries, I know UK, for example, with our fintech Sandbox.
Yes.
Which, you know, they brought up so many startups just to the pure fact that they were so fast in getting to the end users, validating the solutions, and being able to roll it out.
Absolutely.
So that's a critical part of the whole equation of the AI to succeed.
And also what is important, AI is not, you know, a few people working on something. AI is like organization. So company needs to be organized around AI process. So every company, Microblink and Photomet, are organized around the AI process, and you need to like manage this really well. And it's not the level where we are like working hard to actually get there, but you know, like, so AI is actually, company needs to be organized around AI, and you need to manage it effectively. And this experience is also, we don't have this experience also, so management experience. And how do we build it? We build it by making mistakes and correcting them. But also, if you have people who are like good at this, that's very big advantage.
Sure. So we should definitely, all strive, and I'm really glad Ivana was here on the panel before. It really shows some sort of positive light on that side, that the government is also aware about the necessity of trying to involve themselves in that. And I would say I agree with you, Damir. So it's like, we should be realistic about that, not expecting them to do all the work. But yes,
the goal should be that we bring talent here, that people start coming here.
Yeah.
And that not our youngest and brightest people go on the third year of university to study outside, but that we start getting people studying here. Zagreb, Rijeka, Split, Pula, Vodnjan.
And realistically, so I spent some time in London, in like Silicon Valley, and I really don't want to go there and live there. I had opportunity, of course, but I think that Croatia is actually a great place to live. You can have a good financial salary. I think it's like even government created some situation where actually individuals are much better positioned than companies, and this is not. It's like nice for people to really be able to make very solid money and have low cost of living with like good security here. So there are things that we don't even know that we have. We don't actually
appreciate it. Maybe
appreciate them as some like people would say, like zero capital gain tax. Americans are like, when I tell them, they are like, they can't believe it. So yeah, there are some good things, and I think that we have everything. So we have good companies here. We have great living environment actually, and like it should happen. I hope it will happen naturally through like normal economic process, but we are really not using this opportunity as much as we could.
So it's all up to us again, and I really would love to end on that positive note.
But government can. They've done some things, and it can be done. But it's like like more. I always feel is they are more using like good PR opportunities than working on like long-term strategy. But that's politics, I guess.
I guess that's same everywhere. We are ready for your questions right now because we have about 2-3 minutes until Željko starts freaking out that we went over scale. Oh, he's giving me the satisfied look. Unbelievable. I haven't seen that for 8 days. Anybody here has a question for this unbelievable bunch of people here? Yes, please, sir. Oh, I think I recognize that young gentleman. He's very young. He wants to probably start a startup, maybe. Yeah, he probably wants to ask how to do it.
Yeah, this is the first time I have it. So the question for Damir. You said that it's much easier today for companies go globally than before, but what actually the startups, really young guys from like students, should do to do globally? What's the way? I mean, should they put an ad, or
they should build something. They should.
How they find the first customer?
No, they should. If you build something, you experiment. You build something, and so you solve some problem that you see. I always try to solve my own problems that I saw, and with something. So when we started Photomet, I thought that it's actually a good tool to help me check my son's homework. And I was a lazy engineer, and then. Yeah, that was the motivation. This is the moment that I saw, yes, this is, and we were developing this technology, so we applied this technology. Then when we made a mistake, like we tried to build an electronic invoicing system, and I think we didn't have right product market fit. Then I saw opportunity, and then we learned this process, and we saw opportunity to solve problem, like, okay, can we scan payment slips and actually have solutions for that. So we tried, we built, and that's it. And then first investment for Photomet. So we were building it, we built something, we got traction. I don't know, we just like built it, we got traction. And then I contacted investors in Silicon Valley and said, okay, like we are Photomet, like we are doing this. I sent cold email and then replied, yeah, we know who you are, just come here and we'll talk. So, of course, but it was difficult, it's not easy, but you need to build something. I think that's the only approach here. You build something good.
You'll get 3 answers. Wait. Krešo will give you an answer too.
Yeah. what Damir was saying before. So it's just not enough that you build the product and have a good technology. You need to go have the GTM, the pricing, and really push it to the market. Because a startup comes, they build a product, and they think automatically people will start coming. No, neither company which succeeded was sitting and waiting for people to come. So they did from Microsoft, Oracle, Photomat, everybody, and Infobip. We were flying around the world to get clients, to engage with them, to start the whole wheel spinning. Because a good product is super important, but without the GTM, without selling it, you're not going to see. So that's very important, not just the technology, but also the go-to-market. That's something that is missing in Croatia, this mindset. When you talk with people from USA and Asia today, they have it already in the how they're educated through the whole high schools and elementary schools. They're all about marketing, about selling. We are technical guys. We know how to do products. Then we need somebody from marketing to push it. So that's for each startup should be set up in this way, which is then key to success.
Good point. Ratko?
Yeah, just a comment. What the guys are describing is, I would say, typical pushed type of approach, right? What good markets, good countries are doing, they have this component of pull too. Right? So, I imagine for the guys would be much easier if like different guys from different industries, including public sector, which is in Croatia half of the IT spending, right, would come and say like, look, I was here, I recognized, I want to talk about how we implement this in whatever, right? And maybe there will be additional work or investment or something like that, but you will have this huge input, pull input, basically, saying like, okay, can you consider this, can you do this, and so forth. Like, unfortunately, most of the push approach here is left to its own devices, right? So people are just like trying to build, sell, find a way, and so forth, and everybody else is like flipping the fingers and like, okay, eventually maybe that will be okay. But that's the ecosystem problem, right?
Sure.
But then it's like, it is like who survives this? Like, of course, not easy. It's not easy, and it's and we can see, like most successful companies in Croatia were bootstrapped, more or less. Why? Because there was no other.
There was no other option.
No other option. So, like, this is what you do. Of course, like you need to build product, but find a way to actually launch this product. Like with Photomat, we applied to TechCrunch Disrupt, but we built a product, we applied there, and like it happened. We like somehow, but it was based on product and technology, and then later growth. And Microblink, we start selling early. That was the only way to do it, of course. And it was good technology. So so if you build something and it's good, it's like better chance to sell it. And what I hear from investors, they will US investors will give you money, without like only if you are proven startup entrepreneur, then they will give you, okay, like you've done it like already
10
once.
times. Okay, once is
then
enough.
they will give you money, but like in US investors, of course there is a lot of money there, but they will want some proof. And I think the best way to do it, to prove something, is to build, and show them, okay, this is what I have, and they have results. Of course, it's not easy. You need to sell it. You need to find channels. But today, if you are really solving a problem, they will, somebody will understand you are solving a problem. This is how I approach it.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Any other questions? Oh,
3 for 1.
What a great. But thank you very much. There is a question. Sorry, I haven't seen you. So Željko, our lovely assistant, will bring the microphone to you.
Hi. So this question is actually for anyone answering. I've seen countries like Nepal and Bhutan and even Cuba that have ministries of IT. Do you think that Croatia should focus on developing something like that?
No. No, I would hope that I would hope us to have like a ministry or like government focus more on IT, but I lost my hope. So there's no it's like I think it would be important, but I don't see this happening. So.
Yeah, if I can comment, depends, right? I mean, and I will tell you why. In some of the countries, they have ministry of whatever, which is very much focused on the modernization or digitalization of public sector, right, itself, So it's kind of inwards looking, right, which is wrong. Now, in some of the countries, they also do have that one. For example, I kind of think, well, at least in HUP and all these, you know, we were pushing so hard for the Ministry of Economy in Croatia to recognize digital component in the terms of digital entrepreneurship and so forth. So digital economy, right?
Yeah.
And we think that a better form of organization of supporting something like that should exist, right? Mm-hmm. So when all these guys are having an issue or want to do something, well, currently they're lost in space, communicating toward the government. There's no single place where you can go and say like, well, these guys should represent a digital economy inside the government, right? And this is what is missing, right?
So maybe not necessarily a ministry of something.
I don't know.
Let's have someone who
we don't care about
understands
the
what you're
form.
talking
You know what I
about.
mean? It's about results, not the form.
Absolutely. Krešo,
If I would pick a ministry, it would be Ministry of Innovation. That's, I think, because if you look at Israel, what are they doing? So they're not innovating just in IT, they are innovating across everything. So all the startups, half European startups are there.
Now you see why Krešo is VP product.
But I think that
Ministry of Innovation. I think
so,
it encapsulates
it is not about the ministry.
No,
it is not. It is not. No, it's not like. It is about like why was Estonia successful in like IT development? Because their prime minister is actually at the time was somebody who understood really IT and possibilities there, and it is about like do they like as a group of leaders do they understand what we need to do, and will they lead us to this place? And I would say I'm afraid this is not happening now, and I can't see this will happen.
Okay.
It's like, but it's not pessimistic.
No,
it's not pessimistic.
No, that didn't
like I think we are doing our job. We will do our job. So
yeah,
I'm still an optimist, but you know, on this side, government side, you know.
So it's up to us. Again, it's up to us. So whatever we do, that's good. That's what we have to live with. Okay, are there any more questions? Because I would love to wrap this up and have a lunch break right now, if that's okay with everyone. And thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you.